Authorities in Dnipro say that 2 missile attacks completely destroyed the region's airport on Sunday. Russia says its air and sea-launched missiles hit military targets in Ukraine. Philip Crowther has more details from Lviv.
There are all sorts of signs on the ground. This planned Russian offensive in the Donbas region in the east of the country is either underway already or will happen in the next few days. We are hearing on the ground, for example, the governor of the region where Dnipro is. That's a city just outside of the Donbas region. That city's airport was hit by 2 separate missile attacks. It gives you an indication, because this city is to the west of the Donbas region, of how much territory the Russian forces do want to get under their control as quickly as possible. The Ukrainian military says the same thing has happened again over the last 24 hours, as has been happening for weeks now. Continued Russian shelling of the cities of Kharkiv in the northeast and Mariupol in the southeast as well. And the Russian Defense Ministry states that it has been able to attack parts of Ukraine's air missile defense system in separate parts of the country. All of these are signs that Russian forces will be trying, or are already trying, to penetrate further into the east of Ukraine. All of these are reasons, of course, why there are evacuations being planned as quickly as possible. Amazingly, the railway system is still working well. There are evacuation trains being planned from the cities around Kramatorsk, the city where the train station was hit by a missile strike, largely believed to be a Russian missile. Those evacuation trains take a long time to come to a place like Lviv here in western Ukraine that is considered pretty safe by most of those people. It takes over a day to get here. Philip Crowther for CGTN in Lviv, Ukraine.
Austrian Chancellor Karl Nehammer will meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Monday. It will be the first face-to-face meeting between Putin and the European Union leader since Russia's military operation started in Ukraine. Nehammer said he hopes to help build bridges between Russia and Ukraine and stop the conflict. He said Austria is militarily neutral but has a clear position for a ceasefire and humanitarian corridors. Nehammer also briefed some other European partners on the meeting, including Ukrainian President Zelensky. Serbian President Alexander Vučić said his country faces mounting pressure from the West to change its position on Russia. Serbia is the only European country, aside from Belarus, which is tied to Russia as a union state, that hasn't imposed sanctions against Moscow. It's also serving as Russia's gateway to Europe via the skies, with regular flights out of Moscow and St. Petersburg. Alyosha Milankovic reports from Belgrade.
Native Russian artwork and memorabilia are on sale in one of the exhibition galleries on Belgrade's main pedestrian street. From USSR souvenirs to traditional headscarves and babushkas depicting Russian President Vladimir Putin. And just meters away, in the middle of the street, they stand with Serbian memorabilia, the hottest selling item these days. A t-shirt with a massive coat of arms of Serbia and Russia joined together on the front, and even bigger letter Z on the back. It is a rare place in Europe where such a public display can be found these days. And it is a clear showing of where the Serbs stand regarding relations with Russia. But just a few days ago, Serbia's representative in the UN voted to suspend Russia from the body's Human Rights Council. Serbian President Alexander Vučić said that happened because the West effectively blackmailed the country, threatening a cut-off of its oil supply should it break rank.
They told us, do you know that today we decide about Serbia's destiny and whether you'll be exempted from sanctions on oil? And then they told us, okay, until 4 o'clock. At 4 o'clock, you'll vote at the United Nations, so we moved our decision on that to 6 o'clock.
And indeed, soon after, the EU announced its decision to accept Serbia from oil sanctions. On April 3rd, Serbia went to the polls, with Vučić winning his second presidential term in first-round voting, and his party, the SNS, won the parliamentary majority. In a victory speech, Vučić hinted that Serbia would have to change its course on Russia to continue its campaign to join the EU in the future. Yet that could be politically risky.
I wouldn't call it a change in political course. If President Vučić introduces sanctions against Russia, it's not a change in course, it's his retirement as a politician in this country.
Why?
Because the people of this country will not put up with it.
The economic ties between Serbia and Russia are strong, yet not as strong as the emotional ones. Western nations want the Serbian leadership to take a tougher stance against Russia in light of the Ukraine crisis. But domestic public opinion mainly sides with Russia, a country many Serbians view as a historical ally and a friend. If there is a change in policy and Serbia does take a side, then consequences will be inevitable either way. Aljoša Milenković, CGTN, Belgrade.
In Germany, about 800 pro-Russian demonstrators rallied in Frankfurt on Sunday, demanding an end to harassment of the country's Russian-speaking population. Meanwhile, in Hanover, some 350 vehicles took part in a pro-Russian motorcade. About 3,500 pro-Ukrainian demonstrators also gathered in the city. The two camps verbally clashed with each other. Police came to separate the two groups and escort the motorcade along a different route.